Hello, how is everybody doing today? What we're going to do is we're going to be talking to two pioneering Filipino American women who've trailblazed their way into podcast notoriety. Hear from Jen and Nani on their journey on how they have uncovered the individuality while honoring Filipina, Philippine X culture. They can also introduce us to our series of conversation that matters to you. So without further ado, Jen, hello. Nani, kamusta? How are you both? So,
Hello.
yeah, hello, you two. Jen, if you can start, just let us know who you are and a little bit of background. That would be good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. First and foremost, thank you for that very beautiful introduction of us. I always feel uncomfortable when people speak so highly of us, but it also tells me that Nani and I are doing something good when people say nice things. So thank you first and foremost. My name is Jen Amos. I am the founder and co-host of the Filipino American Woman Project, which we call the TFAW Project for short. And our show is supported and funded by our family on thenewfilipina.com, which is our online community. And the show initially started with a simple desire to document more stories of Filipino American women. It was really just my desire to have more of that, because even though I spent 20 years in San Diego and I did grow up with a big Filipino family, there were some things I grew up with that I wanted to challenge, and I wanted to attract something different for my adult life. And so hence that's how the show came to be. We started in December 2016, went on hiatus in 2018, and then started via podcasting in 2019. And that's how Nani came into the picture. Nani?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am Nani Dominguez-Smith, and I work for Kaiser in the National Employee Services Enterprise Business Services Department. And I also have been with the TFAW Project podcast as a co-host since 2019. So we are getting ready to go into our 5th season of the podcast. And yeah, so I joined back in 2019 when I found the podcast on Instagram, actually, and I just slid into Jen's DMs, and we ended up having a initial phone call just to meet and greet with each other the next day, and ended up on the phone for hours talking about God knows what. And at the end of that conversation,
it was just like you guys were sisters then, right? At that point.
right? It was love at first sight. Yes,
Yeah,
it was meant to be. Our stars were just aligned from that very moment. And at the end of our conversation, our 4-hour-long phone conversation, she just said, "Why don't you co-host with me?" So ever since then, that's what we've been doing.
Nice. It sounded like you two really work well together. So what is the Filipino American Woman Project?
Yeah, I'll talk about it from a founder standpoint, and then Nani can obviously share from her perspective of what it's been like being part of the show for the last 4 years. As I mentioned, I really started the show with just this desire. If I'm going to be a little more candid, Kuya Will, I came to a place in my adult life where I wanted to believe that I could be surrounded by more Filipino American women who considered themselves articulate, like good communicators, had a general enthusiasm for life, a general optimism for life, and they consider themselves collaborative. And part of where I'm coming from, if I'm going to be a little more candid here, is my own personal experience of dealing with a crab mentality or dealing with emotionally absent people, where I always felt stonewalled when it came to expressing my feelings and seeking validation from people who I needed that from. And rather than point fingers and point blame and just say, oh, that's just such a Filipino thing, I wanted to believe that I could surround myself with people who valued healthy communication and working together for a common cause, a beautiful cause, and all that. So that's how it started. And the show actually started via Facebook Live so the show started in 2016, but we did Facebook Live in 2017. And that whole year was really just sharing stories. I just wanted to hear people's stories, period. I wanted anyone who felt compelled and comfortable being on Facebook Live to tell their story. That was really important for me. And then I went on hiatus because my husband and I moved from California to the East Coast. I'm currently in Virginia. And then at that time, I was really struggling with kind of finding a new identity in the East Coast. And so part of that was becoming a podcaster. And then fortunately meeting Nani, and we pretty much continued that goal of sharing stories, but this time we were doing it via podcasting. So I'll hand it over to Nani to share also her interpretation of the show.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on what you shared about your personal experience, I think that's why our show and the content that we create resonates with so many people in the Filipino American community, because in Filipino culture, period, mental health is something that's very stigmatized, it's ignored. It's last year for Filipino American History Month here at Kaiser, I did a panel presentation with San Rafael EID on the intersection of health and culture and how our lack of attention to our mental health has affected the physical health of Filipino Americans for generations, and how we carry that through our family legacies. So I think that this show is really pivotal in the narrative of Filipino Americans because it challenges that, like you said, and it really forces us to look inwards instead of playing the rat race and ending up feeling stagnant in this place where we don't feel good, we're depressed, we have anxiety, we don't feel good enough. That's a narrative that we often hear in a lot of the interviews over the last 5 seasons that we've done, is I don't feel Filipino enough, or I don't feel like I fit in, I don't feel like I belong, essentially. And so this podcast and our correlating online community really seeks to challenge that and create this safe container for Pinays by Pinays. So that's the purpose of highlighting our stories. And we, unlike other podcasts by Filipino Americans, we don't have this process of vetting out who we allow on our show and form. We really encourage you to come as you are, just as we do. And we don't need you to be some like high-powered executive or some like highly accomplished academic or have all these accolades in order to have a voice again on our platform. We want to make space for who you truly are without creating this hierarchy of like importance. And I think that the outpouring of messages and feedback that we've gotten from people we've interviewed, from our listeners, from our online community, it really goes to show like how impactful that approach has been.
That's very interesting. What would be the call to action for people to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, it's my hope that with our show, first and foremost, we feel seen. Like we feel like, oh, there's a show about me. And just like what Nani said, we have interviewed Filipino American women from different walks of life. And I remember one of the comments we got about our show is they really appreciated that we weren't just interviewing like social media influencers or incredibly successful professional individuals. We were interviewing moms, we were interviewing authors, we were interviewing just the everyday college student. And it just meant so much to have this platform and invite people in and just listen to their stories with curiosity and openness. It's been so fascinating, like all the things that Nani listed, all the topics that come up out of this. So much of it I didn't even realize were concerns in our community at times too. So I'm constantly surprised and amazed and humbled to know that to be Filipino is a wide spectrum of so many things. And it's my hope that in listening to the show, one, you recognize that your story is valid, and two, that if you want to turn your life around, if you want something different for yourself, you can be the author of your own story. You do not have to just submit to maybe the way that you're raised, or maybe all the messages you receive from your support system, and you were told that you're just going to always be a certain way. Like you can choose to do better for yourself, or you can choose to want something different. And I think all these stories prove that. I'm just constantly amazed and inspired, and again, humbled to know that whatever limiting beliefs I think I have, or that I believe I have, I'm always reminded that I can change that because of the stories we hear on the show.
Yeah, I think to add to that, my specific call to action for either longtime listeners or people listening for the first time, just finding our show, is Just to name it plainly, a lot of our cultural conditioning as Filipino Americans and family dynamics that we grew up with is toxic, and that has lasting effects on our mental health as we grow up and become adults and start interacting with the world and choose careers and come to forks in the road about our profession, whether we stay in a stable, secure role with a big corporate giant, or whether we follow entrepreneurial side hustle, passion projects, whatever you want to call them. I think a lot of us come up against challenges in choosing careers, in choosing how we relate with family, with friends, choosing what our role in relationships looks like, and putting ourselves first. Like Jen said, I think our call to action is to really challenge those toxic aspects of our cultural conditioning and open your mind to be curious of what healthy interactions amongst Filipino Americans could look like, because a lot of us have these experiences in school growing up, like the crab mentality or being bullied by other Filipino Americans, or this kind of dog eat dog mentality that tends to happen in any community. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that Jen and I, the difference that we make is we model in real time what it looks like to have healthy interactions. And that doesn't always mean that you just have to be agreeable and that you have to say okay and go along with what someone else says. There is a healthy way to express yourself while also being respectful, getting along, building community in the process. I think just that core foundation of what true sisterhood really is, we can all redefine that through our own actions and behavior and the relationships that we create.
You two have captivated me, and I'm sure people that have been listening is also captivated. Give us some information for those people that are the first time knowing about you, the Filipino American Women Project. How do they follow you? How do they join your conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. Best thing to do is to just open up a web browser and visit our website, TFAproject.com. TFA is spelled TFAW, as in the Filipino American Woman project.com. And from there, you'll find everything you need to know about us. You'll find all our socials. You'll find Nani and I's bios, how to get a hold of us. It's all there, all on our website. And you can log on via desktop or mobile. It's a pretty dynamic website. And if you want to get a taste of our online community, the website for that, which we don't promote that as one of the first things, but if people really want to dive into conversation now, the website we can send people to is thenewfilipina.com. And so those are the two websites, but I would say for starters, visit tifaproject.com.
Like Jen said, tifaproject.com is where you can listen to the podcast and read our bios and stalk us online. And then thenewfilipina.com is for when you're ready to actually join the conversation and have daily access to Jen and I and the rest of our membership community. It's basically like our own social media platform. So it's an app that you can download on your phone and have access to us in your back pocket at any time.
Perfect. One last thing, are there any upcoming projects that you two have been formulating or baking in the oven, so to speak, that you can share to the audience?
We are so fortunate to be collaborating with you, Kuya Will, with you and Filipino Americans at Kaiser Permanente to be putting together a series of conversations to just speak to the Filipino American community at Kaiser. Some of the topics, actually, I'll just talk about the first one. We're going to talk about the first one and only the first one, because we are especially interested in the initial feedback we get from this. And so the conversation we'll be having with you all is the topic of migration, starting in a new country. And whether you are migrating from the Philippines, Mexico, or any country, being new in a community is always challenging to establish new roots. This discussion will provide insights on how to build a community and assimilate, but not forget your cultural values. And the beauty of our show, Kuya Will, is my hope, my excitement for this conversation is Nani and I are just going to be sharing a lot of stories from people in our community who have experienced migration. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be really fun.
Perfect.
Yes, I think Jen and I are both second-gen Filipino Americans, and so we can share our firsthand experience of learning our families' migration stories through our parents and grandparents, and also the firsthand perspectives of first-gen Filipino Americans who have migrated here themselves that we've interviewed on our show. So we have a myriad of perspective to share with you all on that topic.
This is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to that, both of you. Jen and Nani, thank you so much for not only sharing your experience and also some of the ways that you're building community. Jen, Nani, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Kuya.
Maraming
Thanks
salamat.
for having us.